Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Main Street Media, Utah. This is Talk with Jon. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining me here today. Looking forward to having you all on for basically the next 2 hours. Well, and somewhere around 6 o'clock, we could end minutes or we could end a few minutes after 6. We'll see what happens. I get momentarily. And if you follow us at Talk with on one. I like to give out post and X post of who I have joining me and kind of the topics that I intend on covering with them. Doesn't mean I really hold to it all the time. And as you can see, folks, I took a little drink of water and spilled a little bit of water on me. It'll dry up here in just a moment. But thank you so much for joining us on KMMU.org, Main Street Media, Utah. You can go to our Rumble, YouTube, and X platforms. Now, if you go to kmmu.org, right at the top of the page, you will see that. So, also want to get this show off to a proper start by giving out the show prayer and the show mantra. Well, let's start with the show prayer. I hope my show is a gift back to forefathers, the founding fathers, that may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show, and that's the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. Doesn't mean I live my life that way all the time, but it's definitely what I have in mind when I'm doing this show. Then the show mantra, where there's liberty, where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty, and the greater the Spirit of Christ, greater liberty will be. All right, let's get to it. Let's bring on my guest. My guest needs no introduction to the state of Utah, to a few people outside the state of Utah, but Phil Lyman, my good friend, ran for was in my opinion, if not the best, one of the best state representatives we've ever had. Mike Morley, I would say, was up there. I don't know if Phil Lyman has ever met Mike Morley, but Mike Morley was a good guy, had a lot of good bills. But Phil Lyman I asked him to please, I remember, folks, it's my fault that he's not a state representative. You can blame me, because back in 2022, I said, Phil, we've got to have you run for governor. And he's like, Jon, that's ridiculous. No one's going to vote for me. And I'm like, I don't think so. And so it's my fault, folks. It's my fault. So all of you down in San Juan County can blame me. And please don't hurt me. Please don't shoot me, folks. Well, if you shoot me, just make it a good shot. I'm gone real quick.
It's a fair request.
I just realized one of the topics that we're going to be talking about. I'm like, yeah, maybe not such the best thing for me to say that. But Phil, I am so glad to have you here, brother. Thank you for joining me. Phil Lyman, I consider a friend, folks, and the rest of you who have never met him in person, really talked to him very long. He's a good friend of yours too. Trust me. One thing that I've come to experience is I've been surprised. There's been a few times, like I was down in Sevier County, and some guy walks and says, "Hi, Jon, how you doing?" And I'm like, now I'm a business to business sales guy, and so I crossed a lot of people, a lot of faces, names. I'm not as terrible with remembering female names, unless one of my children's names, my mom's names, or something like that. I have a hardest time remembering female names for some reason. My dad says it's a gift. My dad says, Jon, that's a gift. Trust me. But this guy, I was like, man, I don't ever remember seeing I said, please forgive me. I can't say where we've met one another. And he's like, oh no, you're Talk with Jon. I'm like, yes. Okay. All right. So, but what do I learn from that? I've come across other people that are content creators and, kind of do what we do. And you get to know someone's personality. You get to Phil has been out there enough that you know him. I think you really know him. You know what makes him tick. How about that? You may not know all the details. You may not know his exact height, his exact weight, but you know what makes him tick. And you know, I frankly, you can get a good feel of someone by being around him. So without much more, Phil, I'm going to let you say hi to our audience.
Well, thanks, John. And speaking of weight, you've lost weight. You look good.
I thank you. I'm going to say thank you.
And your beard looks amazing. I'm just like, it's like white and it's very striking. You
yes,
look really good.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man, Phil. I am.
Yeah,
I'm above
yeah.
50, and
I haven't seen you for a month or so, and anyway, you're looking good. So, but I'm always so glad to come on, and I guess right back at you on the commitment to truth and exposing this stuff, and we're seeing it happen. I just feel like events of the last couple of months have really helped to shine a light into some of the darkness, and so it's every day you learn the truth is a good day, even if it's a truth that you would prefer not to know. It's like let's get down to the truth. Let's find out what's going on, and you've been doing that for a very long time and very, very committed to it. And I'm personally, extremely grateful to you for making that sacrifice, because I know it's a sacrifice.
It is, and I hope I can continue on with doing it. There's an opportunity cost that happens, from not earning income from doing this, as and being out there and doing political and being a voice. I try to be a watchman on the hill. I try to be a watchman on the tower. I attempt to do that as you do, and that's so. I think I've shared this with you before, and this is what I appreciated so much about you. I typically ask. So I've been a state delegate, I've been a county delegate, and when I'm interviewing the people that are running for office, I say, what is the most important? What are the 3 or 4 most important things you do in your role? Should you be elected? What is the most important thing you do? And so they give a very usually they ramble on, right? The majority of them ramble on. Some of them are pretty good, but this is an answer that you've given me roundabout. I think you've given me a very similar answer, and there's some other ones that have given me this answer. But I'm going to tell you what I think the answer is. And I used to say the number one answer, which I don't think is the number one answer. The number one answer is you are a no vote. It is more important to vote for bad bills, to vote no on a bad bill, than it is to vote yes on a good bill, especially in the state of Utah,
right,
in my opinion. But I've come around to the thought process that actually the most important thing that a state representative can do, that a mayor can do, that a governor can do, that someone for federal office can do, that the president of the United States should be doing. What is the number one most important thing they should be doing? And my opinion is they should be the watchman on the tower. If you're a watchman on the tower, that is the number one thing you need to be, and saying, hey, folks, this is what I see coming down the pike. Or this is the reason why this bill is bad. We don't want to support it. You don't want to be part of it, because, it's so often the rhinos, the Dems will run the bill of the most patriotic bill ever to be written, right? That's the name of the bill.
Mm-hmm.
The Patriot Bill, right? The Patriot Bill. The most patriotic name you can give a bill. Everybody should want it. You don't believe in patriotism? And so what you need is a watchman on the hill that's willing to say, you may think that's the case, but that's not the case. So I would say that's the number one job. Now, not everybody does it. Very few do. Phil Lyman did that. Number 2, vote no for bad bills. Number 3, vote yes on good bills. What are your thoughts on that?
It's being a legislator is an interesting place to find yourself, and it's not hard to kind of see the tea leaves and see how things are going to stack up, and legislators are not dumb, and they're not cowards for the most part. There's a few that I would say maybe are a little cowardly, but what they are is they're looking at the wrong things. They don't know what fight they're fighting. They think that their fight is to get elected next time around, and to gain popularity with the leadership and in this top down hierarchy. They're some of them are really, really good at it, and they look at somebody like me and say, "Man, that Lyman, he's an idiot. He's stupid the way he's not making friends up here." And it's like, well, I didn't come to make friends. That's not what I came to do. And so what I've said a lot lately to my team and whatnot is like, if you recognize that these agenda driven things were moving forward and that they were sinister and that they were going to rob your children of their future and their freedom, what should be the proper response? And that's kind of where I live. And honestly, I think I came into politics in that environment, like watching people's lives destroyed by what I would say is bad policy. And it seems like, well, policy should be fairly innocuous, but it's not. Policy is what robs people of their homes, through property taxes or of their water, or some of these things we're going to be talking about today. And ultimately policy leads to the radicalization of our children and our universities, and the DEI policies that have made basically brought in cultural Marxism into our grade schools and all the way up through college has created a really, really destructive path. So I think the ones who want us to think that policy is kind of innocuous are the ones that are passing really, really bad policy. And then they back that up by saying, and we want another policy, which is, let's all disagree better, and let's have a dignity index where we can put a scorecard on you and basically give you a social credit score for the language that you use. And they want to be in charge of that too. And if you're a watchman, you see this and you see, like, this is not good. This is going to be really bad for us and for our children and for future generations. And I think sometimes they're not seeing the game that's actually being played.
So I want to say it was Jason Preston said this. Was the first person that I heard put it this way. When some people would say, I don't believe, I'm not into politics. I don't believe in politics. I think he was the first one to say, well, politics believes in you.
Yeah.
And in general, I'm going to add this component to it. Yeah. Politics believes in you. And politics is really glad that you have that perspective. That's what politics wants. Politics and politicians want you to have the perspective of, no big deal. Politics are just, boring and folks, some in a big way they are. In a big way they are. But when it really matters, and your house is being taken away from you because bad laws and bad policies have been written up, guess what? It's not. It is draconian, and so politics believes in you, and in general, politics wants you to be not caring, and not pay attention.
Yeah. You can go looking for it, but it is definitely looking for you. So,
all right. Well, I went off camera. I just realized something was not perfect with the setup that I wanted, so I needed to reposition a few things and turn on a light.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm a little more lighted. So one of the topics that I wanted to bring you up on, and as we get going, there's a great way for people to come and meet Phil Lyman. There's a great way to. He is part of the. Let's see if I can say. Guided by God, Grounded in Freedom Conference in Herman, November 1st. The event starts at 2:30, and this is a conference that you can go. They've got a number of other speakers, really good speakers, and I would come and listen to this. You can talk to Phil, find out what he's attempting to do, but I really like the name of that conference, Guided by God, Grounded in Freedom. I would say this is great. This is something really good, especially those of you that are in northern Utah, worth coming and seeing, because Phil is going to be driving a long way from down on the other side of the state up here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
do you want to tell us what you're going to be talking about?
So, I
at
mean,
that conference?
Dr. Moore, Kirk Moore is going to be there talking as well. So another well-known person in Utah. And I don't think
Who
people,
fought the fight well?
yeah, he fought the fight well, and people don't have a full appreciation for what his stand did. I mean, literally saved lives, hundreds of lives. There's, now they're looking at some of the COVID vaccines, and there are some bad batches. Well, he was looking at those things too, and he saved a lot of people from receiving a vaccine from a bad batch. Now, I don't know if there's such a thing as a good batch of COVID vaccine, but we know there were some that were, worse than others, and this one was. Anyway, Kirk Moore's going to be there. Ben, I've got that flyer there. Anyway, Ben Berquam, super, patriot. Love to listen to Ben, and he's always. I see him at all these, national conferences, and he's always just upbeat. And he's going to be there. Will Witt, who's also great. Dave Bray is a great musician that's going to be there, and Jeremy Harrell, who's going to be there. So this is not a. I mean, I am the bottom of the totem pole by a long ways on this conference, and so I'm really honored to be there. Kish North and Utah Patriots put it together, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be significant. Kish does a few of these events, and he always does a good job. This one feels a little bit different to me, especially after the Charlie Kirk incident and everything that people are dealing with. I think they're hungry for the truth that is going to be spoken at this conference, and I think that's what this is going to be about. Is just where are we at, as a nation and as a state, and what do we do? What is the proper response to the things that we're facing right now?
So, when you first came on my show and talked about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I've got to remember that not everybody watches every show. So, real quickly for the audience, those of you that are not up to speed, Phil was actually at the event. Phil is actually in one of the last pictures, like one of the last group pictures taken with Charlie Kirk alive. And talked with Charlie Kirk. Was down at ground level and then moved up to almost where the supposed sniper shot was taken, or the shot was taken by Tyler Robinson. And I feel like it was providential that you were there personally. Someone that knew Charlie, cared about Charlie cared about you. Charlie was a supporter of yours. He supported your campaign. He was not a Cox supporter. And what I appreciate you did and you said right off the bat was, we can establish one thing. Charlie Kirk is dead, and and it's like, and these days I'm like, it's 99.9% he's likely that he's dead,
Right.
and I personally believe that he is dead. There is, is our world so messed up that people would maybe take him out. Yeah, but he was so big. He would not willingly go. At the very least, I don't think he would willingly go and step down, not from what he was doing. So, um, Charlie Kirk is dead, and he did not die of natural causes.
Yeah.
That much we know. And I'm going to say it is becoming more and more questionable on the mainstream narrative. How true is it? And one of the most important things we need to do with people like you, like people like me, that are commentators on the news, I need to do everything I can to tell people what I believe, what I think to be true. I am willing to let people say things. I bring on guests that give opinions, and I've brought on guests that have given opinions that I disagree with, that I don't concur with, but I'm willing to let them say it. And I think that's important. But one of the things that we need to do is, when we find things to not be true, we need to do everything we can to say, hey, whoops, I made a mistake. And so I'm going to talk about Candace Owens specifically. Now, in a way, congratulations that you were on a hit piece. Maybe not a hit piece, but you were caught in the crosshairs of Candace Owens. So great job, because you were there. You were standing up. You were being accountable. And I actually think more people are going to find out about Phil Lyman and going to be able to support him. Now, I'll tell you, Candace Owens, I know a bunch of people that watch this show absolutely love Candace Owens. I'm going to tell you, I've had a question mark with Candace Owens for a while. I think she intends on coming from a good place. She tries to look like she's coming from a good place. But I'm not sure if she's more interested in how well known she is and how much money she makes, than and I really have questions that she is more interested in making the money than she is in getting things right. And this has nothing to do with you, Phil. But Nick Fuentes, she went after Nick Fuentes when she was on the Tucker Carlson show, and she went after him pretty hard. And Nick Fuentes said, Candace, let's debate. And so she turned around and said, yes, let's debate. And I'm going to put you on my show, and we're going to do a debate, and I'm going to put it behind my paywall. And soon as she did that, just a big old siren went off, and the lights going off. Like, I don't find you 100% genuine if you're going to go, come onto my platform, and she's not. And Nick, let's see, Alex Jones has said, I'll have both of you on, and it's going to be free to view, right? He's not going to make people pay to see it. Candace Owens, if you were totally genuine, that's exactly what you would have done. Okay, let's fast forward to right at the end of September. She comes across Phil Lyman and starts making allegations about Phil Lyman and another lady, saying that they were kind of implying, I have questions. Okay, I have questions too. But one of her big statements is, I have questions. I'm just saying I have questions. Now, Candace, I appreciate it. You have questions on the sex and gender of the premier's wife. Legitimate. I think you should be able to ask it. And no, I don't think I think that it should have been thrown out of court when you were taken to court by the premier's wife. I think that should have been thrown out on its face. They're public figures. There's nothing wrong with even satire or whatever you question. I sure hope you have proof, because I don't want to see you get Alex Jonesed or now Mike Lindell. I don't want to see that happen, because both of those individuals were not found guilty by their peers. They were, I believe it was, what is the term? Where the court, in both Alex Jones and Mike Lindell's case, they were found guilty because they didn't show what the court wanted in documentation. that information wasn't there. And so the judge gave a summary judgment, I believe, and found them guilty. And so I hope that doesn't happen to you. But the bottom line is, you called Phil Lyman a liar, and you said you thought he might be in on it, basically, and you're accusing him and another lady of being in on it. So Phil, let's talk a little bit about that. I want you to kind of clear up your name. Now, bottom line is, when I last looked at it, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, it was over 800,000 views. So there's been a lot of people that have viewed what you said, but it was 50 minutes long. I loved how you broke it down piece by piece, and it was very good. You broke it down. You were fair. And here's the other thing that I loved about it, Phil. You said, "I'm right here, Candace. Let's talk." Candace, if you're really honest and you're really genuine and you make accusations on someone, and I guarantee you, with that many views, I know it got back to you. In fact, I know for a fact that there are people that know Phil Lyman and know Candace and have both of their phone numbers and said, "Hey, Candace, Phil Lyman wants to come on your show." Candace, you want to be the watchwoman on the tower. If you really want to have that role, you know what you do? You bring someone on like Phil Lyman that you make accusations about. Okay, so Phil.
Yeah. So my problem with Candace is that she lies indiscriminately, just like lies. And I've got a problem with that. It's hard to work with the person. When she said, she gets on there and she said, I reached out to Phil Lyman. He left me unread. It's like, no, Candace, you texted me and I texted you 10 minutes later. And then you went for 3 days and you texted me and I texted you 10 minutes later. And you go for another 3 days and you text me. And we got into it by the end of it.
Okay, Phil, I got a little bit of a beef because
Yeah.
there's been times you've gone 12 hours without returning a text to talk with Jon.
Forgive me.
It's okay. No, I really don't.
I mean, the point is, we're discussing, we're talking. So that's a lie. Now she can come out and say, "Oh, look, Phil Lyman was here, and the shooter was here." This weird. Isn't that weird? Isn't that so weird? And it's like, oh, it's weird if you make it weird, Candace, and she's really, really good at that. But when she goes after me, that's one thing. When she goes after my family, when she goes after my family's families, when she goes after my family's friends, it's like this starts to feel directed at Phil Lyman. And then I have to say, number one, like you say, well, thank you. Thank you for revealing that there is something going on here. I'd like to understand why it is that Phil Lyman and anybody connected to Phil Lyman is now being attacked by Candace Owens. And that's what was happening. So we get down to what she said is my nephew. It's the son of my first cousin. I'm glad to call him a nephew. He's glad to call me an uncle. I don't know him very well, and I certainly don't know his friends very well. And she's getting on there and saying, "Isn't that weird? I mean, they're chilling on the block. They're all out there chilling on the block, and Phil doesn't even know who these." It's like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then it goes from what I've always loved about Candace is her provocative style. I think it stirs things up. It makes people angry. They start saying things they might not have otherwise said. Maybe you get down to some truth. I'm appreciative of that. But when you shift from trying to uncover the truth to trying to cover up the truth, and that's what it's like, Candace, I'm giving you all of this information. I'm giving you names and people and video and sending you stuff. And instead you get on and say, he's withholding names. He's withholding video. And then she starts like throwing these wild accusations out. And kind of to your point, you're accusing somebody of marrying a transgender person is different than saying, "I believe you conspired to murder Charlie Kirk." This is a big deal. And I was an eyewitness. I was there along with 3,000 other people. I didn't go there to witness something. I went there to support Charlie. I went there to support the kids, the young Republicans and the Turning Point students. And I wanted to be there for that. And it was exciting, nobody anticipated, at least nobody generally anticipated that, a shot would ring out and Charlie Kirk would be rushed off the stage. Now, and right after that happened,
the 3,000 students that showed up roughly the 20, somewhere between 25 and 3,000 people that came to watch, they did not intend on watching him die. I,
No, no.
I think, to your point, at least one person, and I'm going to guess that there are a few people, knew that man was dying.
Yeah,
And
I think so too.
and
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. But right afterwards, and she's like, oh, he says he was there, and then he says he didn't see. I wasn't looking at Charlie when he got shot. I was in a different spot, and I heard the shots, and I turned right around and went back out to see what is going on. And people, and she wants to make an issue of like, oh, he says he saw him got shot, and then he says he didn't see him get shot, and it's like, well, no, I didn't say that at all. What I said is I was there. I was very close to where the shooter was. And then they said, oh, he says he saw the shooter. It's like, no, I didn't say that. I said I was close. I heard this bang. I'm only saying what I absolutely, with my own eyes, my own ears, what I experienced and what I saw, as well as 3,000 other people who were kind of doing the same thing. And it's interesting when, I told, wasn't Candace, but somebody else that was, tying into all of Candace's stuff. This is the interesting thing with her network is Candace Owens says something and you've got 100 other podcasters at least that take it and they just go with it and they run with it. And I was talking to one of them. I said, if I had a friend who called me today and said, I've got video footage of Tyler Robinson coming off the roof and getting in a car, I would say either destroy that. I would not share it with anybody. At this point, I wouldn't even share it with the FBI because the FBI doesn't seem to be interested in that narrative. And certainly don't give it to Candace Owens because she will attack you as an accomplice or a conspirator. And those things, it's like that is not helpful. No matter what her objective is, I would say Candace, number one, is not a friend of Charlie Kirk. There's nothing that indicates that she's remorseful, that she is trying to actually, resolve an issue. She is not a friend of Charlie Kirk's, and she is not honest. And despite all that, she's provocative. She's stirring things up, and I think there's some really fishy stuff that went on there. I've said it. I've said it before. I don't think the guy walking down the street was the same guy that was on the roof. I don't think the guy in the stairwell was the same guy that was on the roof. But what do I know? I'm just using these and looking at what I saw. I was the last one probably to see footage of what actually happened to Charlie Kirk. I'm sure most of the nation saw that long before I did because I was at the place. Then I was on phone calls and I was on interviews really for 2 solid days. My wife said, have you seen the footage? I said, no, I haven't. I don't know that I want to. And I thought, well, of course I need to see what happened. And she sent it to me and it was disturbing. And I thought, most people saw this within hours. I didn't see it for probably till, at least Friday when I actually looked at that. And it was troubling. Also, I'll just say this too, probably reacting to some of the accusations that have been made, but right afterwards, number one, we got the shooter. So there's no active shooter anymore. We got the shooter. I didn't know it was George Zinn. Or I would have said that's not the shooter. And then the number two, they said, Charlie's got a pulse. He's in the hospital. And it's like, most of the people that were there saying, I don't know how that's possible, but maybe, maybe, I don't know. Again, not having seen the footage and other people saying, oh no, there's no way he survived that. But then come back and it's like, oh no, my cousin works at Timpview Hospital. And she said that he's got a pulse and, so you get all these rumors. And so you've got this, this up and down, this roller coaster going of maybe he's going to be all right. I mean, I'm praying for him. I'm praying for his, for his team, that the doctors, all these things. And, in hindsight, you look back and you think, well, I think he was dead before he hit the ground. I really, but we don't know any of that at the time. There's so much unknown and so much actual, whatever you want to call it, shock, or at least disbelief, or, amazement at what is unfolding right in front of you. So very, very unfair the way that Candace has gone about this. And she hasn't, she could care less. She could care less about Utah. She could care less about the companies that she implicated that are now struggling with threats and cyber threats and death threats to their employees and different things like that. It's like, I had one podcaster down in Atlanta, Mr. I am something anyway. And he's like, well, if they did this to Charlie, and he did a horrible piece on me. I think he said my name 100 times in his 1 hour podcast. Phil Lyman, Philly, Wang, just like, and what an ugly effort, just like an hour long of just ridicule. And he's like, well, if they shot Charlie Kirk, I'm worried they might go after Candace. And if they go after Candace, I mean, they might even shoot me. And I said, well, it's interesting you've got that fear, yet you take my name and you go for an hour-long podcast with 385,000 YouTube followers, and you just smear me. I said, do you have kids? And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, he said, I wouldn't want my name used that way. And I said, look, I do not take this personally, but the harm, when you do harm to a person, all I want is your email address so my attorney can send you a letter and we can talk about your role in kind of damaging a person's reputation, or at least to stop doing it. It's really interesting. I'm not a defamation, guy, but I've become one through all of this. Is like that. There's a point where you just say this is not the way that we do things. Ryan Mata, big account on X, and I went on his live and then he gets on there just lying about Phil Lyman. He's like, oh yeah, he's like sending me all these weird DMs. It's like, oh no, Ryan, you sent me 3 DMs and I said sounds good. It's like, I'm not harassing you. I'm not trying to get on Ian Carroll's show. Ian reached out to me and then they're like, oh yeah, he's trying to get on Ian Carroll's. He's trying to be the first on TV. He's selling video footage to TMZ. It's like just lie after lie after lie. And I'm sorry I'm rambling on about this, but then the real question, John, that comes back is how does a person like Phil Lyman end up in the middle of all of this stuff? And I believe that it's because of my politics right here in Utah, criticizing the things that I am critical about, and whatever the powers that be here in Utah have put me into the meat grinder, and then they feed it, all this stuff, which is easy to do on social media. And that tells me a lot. I mean, I've learned a lot. I'm smarter now than I was, 2 months ago. And anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
So this is something I would say with Candace Owens. Candace Owens tries to come across as one of the biggest straight shooters there ever was. If that's the case, bring on Phil Lyman. He's willing to talk about what he knows. And it was 5 or 6 days before I realized you had been involved. You'd been there when it happened. As soon as I realized you had been there, I wanted to get you on because I wanted your first, because I know Phil Lyman. Phil Lyman is an honest actor. He's always been a straight shooter. He's always been honest with me. Everything that he has ever said has been completely straight, and I've been able to take it to the bank. So I'm like, let's see, past behavior is probably the best predictor of future results possible. So I was like, I'm reaching out to Phil Lyman, and I want to get Phil Lyman on. And I'm going to say, this is one thing that bothers me in the conservative space. I'm willing for people to have different thoughts and share different views, because this is, I'm going to repeat what you said the first time you were on the show. After the shooting, you don't believe that Tyler Robinson was the one that shot, that took the fatal shot. Is that correct?
I still feel that way. Yeah.
Okay. So, but you have also shared, you heard a pop from where supposedly he was taking that shot, correct?
In that vicinity.
Yes.
Very close. I was standing very close to that spot, and that's where I heard that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I heard that.
So, I think it so this is, I think I stated it a little bit earlier, and I'm going to state this again. I think it was divine, providential. Um, it was divine and providential that you were there when this shooting happened. Um, and I would say that Spencer Cox would say, no, I better not. This has worked out very well for Spencer Cox. He has benefited that it happened in Utah from getting his name out there. He has looked very leadership, almost presidential. And I also find it in, so I just go, he has benefited from this. Why Candace Owens, if you need to be going after anybody in politics in Utah, you should be going after Spencer Cox. And the fact that you're not going after Spencer Cox, to me, and going, Spencer Cox, why were you taking such a lead position? Normally the person that handles the majority of those type of presentations after somebody's been shot. Yes, you'll have a political face, you'll have a mayor, you'll have a governor, but then you go, let me bring on the law enforcement and let's break it down what we know. Spencer Cox, I've not heard you say anything that the judge here in Utah put a gag order on roughly 3,000 people and said you can't talk about it. Now, I have not received anything in the mail that says I can't talk about it. So, and even if I had, boy, I'd love to find, I might be calling up a couple good friends of mine and saying, hey, you want to get your name out there? Let's go fight this baby, because this is ridiculous. But, Candace Owens, get a guy that has a track record that actually, frankly, should, from what you've shared, you have a lot in common with Candace. You report to be the type of person that Phil Lyman is. Get him on and talk to him.
Yeah, it is strange, a world where Phil Lyman and Candace Owens are on opposite sides of things. It's like that's a strange scenario. But
I would have never, had someone told me 3 months ago, Candace Owens is going to be attacking Phil Lyman for something that Phil Lyman has firsthand knowledge of.
So, and I do think that Candace believes that I am running for governor in 2028. I think, she did one show shortly afterwards. Jason Chaffetz is a friend of mine, and she, it's so weird that I was there. So weird that this person was there. But when she talks about Jason Chaffetz, it's like, oh, but he was so reasonable. And so it's like, okay, if that's what you're doing, Candace, just come out and say, I endorse Jason Chaffetz for governor of Utah. That's an honest statement to go and assume these things and decide, well, I'll preemptively, destroy Phil Lyman. It's like, okay, well, that's your prerogative too. And, honestly, John, I am a Wild West kind of guy. I much prefer the freedom of, conversation and accusation, all of those things, to like shutting it down and disagreeing better and all that nonsense. So I have huge respect for troublemakers and rabble rousers, and to the extent that Candace has done that, I give her the kudos. The only problem I have is when she blatantly lies and covers up truth when it's like, I really am interested in finding out the truth. There's another guy that's on X that jumped into it. Gordon Webb is his name. And Gordon, he said some really outlandish things about me. And I commented on his post. And then I private messaged him and said, you're asking some really good questions, same questions that I have. We're coming to very, very different conclusions, but I'd be glad to share my insight. And he immediately flipped and he said, it feels like maybe Phil Lyman is being framed in a certain way here. What I thought Phil Lyman must be doing, because the shooter's walking right past his car and things like that, is like, well, maybe there is something to hit the shooter or the proposed shooter walking past Phil Lyman's car. Maybe someone's doing something deliberately to Phil Lyman. It's like, that's what I feel too. I feel like something's going on here, and I am not running for anything right now, John. I might in the future, I might not. I am fighting a really big fight on the 2024 election stuff, and we are uncovering corruption right and left and collusion at the highest levels. And I do know that that makes some people, want to come after me personally, but I'm not, I'm not backing away from it at all. I'm not backing down at all. So
I'm going to say this: the rhinos definitely want to come after you. There's no question about that. The rhinos want to come after you. Republicans in name only definitely want to come after you because you won the nomination at the Republican convention. And there are a lot of people that are Phil Lyman supporters. So yes, they definitely don't want you there because you're not a mainstream. I want to just mention a few things that Dwayne, our producer, shared. He said that indeed that video was very disturbing, and he says so. He used to be an EMT a long time ago, and he said when I saw that video, I said the same thing. He was gone before he hit the ground. Now, I think it's possible that he still had a pulse. The heart can still keep on pumping for a while if it's not like totally damaged. I have questions on whether that thing might have been totally damaged or not. That's another. We have no, to this point, the only person that I somewhat trust that has been doing a lot of digging into this, I take that back. There's two people. Michael Letts, you met Michael Letts. We had you on at the same time. Michael
he was awesome. Yeah, he was awesome.
And then also Joel Skousen was on of the World Affairs Brief, and he does a very good job of breaking this down. He reached out to it's the coroner's office. I forget it's not called the coroner's office here in state coroner's office, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
That would be the common name for it. He reached out to him and he said, I have a question for you. Was there an autopsy? And is there a finding? And they never got back to him. He didn't say, I want to know the autopsy, but he did look into that. So to this point, I still am not confident that there's been an autopsy that's been done on the body.
I don't know. I'd heard there was not. So
Joel Skousen's done some digging, and he believes at this point there was a creator that had done some looking into this, and according to that creator, they believe that there was an autopsy done. All right, so real quickly, Office of Medical, that's what it is. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate you. So, folks, just so you know, John doesn't pull all these things out. Sometimes I forget, and it was Dwayne pulling that out for me. But before we get going any further, you're listening to and watching Talk with John on KMMU, live on X, Rumble, and YouTube, and on our website, kmmu.org. You call in and ask. Oh, we now have the ability to call in. You can call in and ask Phil a question at 395-899-2134. Our lonely call screener is Ween. So if you want to put that on the screen, Dwayne, when opportunity. And it looks like on my end, the computer is being a little slow and getting things out a little slow. I might try to close a few things down. But so anything else that you want to talk about? I want to be very clear on this. So why did I bring this topic up all together? It is important for us conservatives because we're labeled conspiracy theorists. And when someone says, well, you're a conspiracy theorist, I go, yes, I wear that with a badge of honor because the bottom line is yesterday's conspiracy theories are turning out to be fact. And on top of that, let's see, I'm not a coincidence theorist either. We've got a lot of coincidences that happen. Looks like there might be a conspiracy. Now, here's the problem. Satan and his minions do a great job of covering up for conspiracy. He doesn't want conspiracy known. So what we need to do, I think Phil Lyman does really well. What I try to do here on Talk with John is I try to give out what I know and what I believe to be true. I do my best to separate them. I can't all the time. But as soon as I know something to be wrong, I do everything I can to correct it, including get people on that can correct that information. So, Phil, is there anything else kind of you want to say when it comes to the Candace Owens situation? And I didn't realize that there were that many other. So it was nice to hear that at least one content creator was like, "Oh, well, let's flip this on its head, and
Yeah.
let's okay, I bring you on, and we'll talk about the truth." Because I'm sorry, Candace Owens.
It was
Yeah.
it was a hit job. It was a political hit job, and that's in the hierarchy of like noble acts versus like ignoble acts. I think at the very bottom of that is political motivation, because political motivation justifies the most egregious things. Because that gets into like kind of the scheming and the colluding and the like organized stuff. So politically, when someone decides they're going to go after someone politically, it's I mean, I understand it, and I see a lot of politics, and I watch it happen. But to me, that's kind of the bottom rung of society when you're going after somebody for political reasons, and that's again very instructive to me. Yeah, I will never view Candace Owens as a truth seeker again. Again, might do some good. I don't fault people for their business model, but she's a clickbait whatever, and sensationalizes stuff that shouldn't be, especially in this situation with Charlie Kirk. And that's what I've said. Charlie deserves better. He really does deserve better than what he's gotten from Candace. So
And he deserves better from the state of Utah. The bottom line is I am super concerned that the judge wants this to be black holed. He doesn't want to be anyone to be able to comment on it. He just
well, I did tell somebody the other day. I said, look, I know what I saw, and that was the grandstanding by Spencer Cox after the event. And I did watch that. I did witness that, and I was puzzled by it. I was unhappy about it, and it turned into like a 3-day marathon of when CNN they showed me a clip when I was interviewing with them, and after the clip I said, I'm sorry, what's he auditioning for? They cut that part out, but that's what it felt like. It's like, what? Come on, this is a performance by a performer, and anybody that doesn't see it for that is probably in on the performance side of it. And it's very much like the left side, the Democrat side, the rhino side that is saying, oh my goodness, did you see how wonderful Spencer Cox was? And I'm not trying to disparage Spencer Cox either. In this situation, it was just so inappropriate. At the nightclub shooting in Orlando, Rick Scott, the governor there, said like 3 words at the beginning and then turned it over to law enforcement, and they did their thing. And but there was one person that went out to do some grandstanding in Orlando, and that was Spencer Cox again, as the lieutenant governor, and he was out there grandstanding with Troy Williams and Equality Utah, and it's like, this is not a time for you to audition for some higher office. But that's what stuck out to me. That's what I observed, and that part of it was troubling. That was very troubling. And also, I thought that Patel Cash, I thought he came in and like scrambled the eggs. I said that before. It's hard to unscramble an egg, and it felt like by the end of the first day, it's like, okay, this is nuts. We are not seeking the truth. We are seeking a narrative, and all other opinions be damned, because we've got a narrative and we're sticking to it. And it was ugly.
Do you know anyone personally that knows the Robinson family?
I do not.
Okay. That's
not.
something I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone personally that knows them. Now, I know of a few people that are like 2 steps removed from them.
Me too. Yeah.
Now, I know I take that back. Joel Skousen is one step removed from Tyler Robinson. Apparently, if I understand Joel Skousen correctly, Tyler Robinson was in his ward down in St. George. And he knew people that actually went to his house, and he's like, yeah, he cussed them out when they went over to, introduce themselves. So Tyler Robinson, unfortunately, we may not get the truth on what happened there, but unfortunately, he's in a bad spot where I would love to find some people that actually know their family, so we can say, okay, what's really going on?
And I will say this, the same people that are saying, well, it's impossible that Tyler Robinson could have done that. It's like, no, that part is, it is possible. It is possible that Tyler, motivated out of his, devotion to, his transgender boyfriend, climbed up on the roof with a 30-06 and shot Charlie Kirk from that distance. It's not a terribly long shot. So it's not inconceivable to me. All of that stuff is like, I'm not discounting that. I just looked at that and thought, I don't think that's what happened. And then seeing all the reaction, it felt like, okay, that's just a really convenient narrative. You call that a patsy. And I think that's what we're seeing, but I could be totally wrong. And it wouldn't take a highly trained military operative to make a 145-yard shot with a 30-06 if the scope was sighted in. That's where the narrative about putting the gun together on the roof doesn't hold water for me. But and I'm not a gun expert, but I've grown up around guns. I've grown up around 30-06s. I know kind of the sound that they, it's a loud bang, and that's kind of what I thought. This is a high caliber rifle. I've said before, I was concerned that there's going to be more, just like bang, 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 bang. That's what I ran out to see if I could help to prevent, if possible. That's why I was interested in finding where the shooter was. It was not like so I could get a picture of him. It was like, this could be really, really bad. And obviously I wasn't the only one that felt that, because people were running and screaming. That's a scary thing to watch somebody shot in front of you and then realize I'm in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And that's not that. I didn't feel like I was in a fishbowl. I thought those kids are in a fishbowl, and yeah. I said I felt like, I think that guy's on the roof above me. That's kind of so I didn't feel like I was in the line of fire either. Then when I saw where it was, it's like, oh wow, if that's where that shot came from, I was dead in the line of fire. But he obviously did what he did and off to to escape. So who knows?
Have you had any correspondence either with the two gals or people that knew the two gals that were in your video that you chatted with right after?
No, I've not. And here again, that got misconstrued by Candace in a really, vicious, ugly way. It was interesting to me that they were not nervous about being shot themselves. And that's all it was. It's like that. I observed that, and it was an interesting observation. It's like, wait a second. And then their contempt that they demonstrated for the kids, and you put those things together, and people can have contempt. They can have contempt for Charlie Kirk. They can jump up and down and cheer after he's shot. That is not illegal.
Turn to a camera and start cheer. I mean, the guy that turned to the camera with the beard and stuck out his arms and cheered, like,
it's something, right? It's something. It's like a normal person observes that and goes, that seems odd. George Zinn jumping up and doing the thing like that. And then it's like, I don't know, but it seems odd. It just seems odd.
It's not how you or I would react, even if we were to see, let's say, AOC. If she was to get shot, I literally would fall down on my knees and pray for her to live.
100%.
I would. I mean, you would not hear the same things, and I don't think you would see the same reaction. Now, I don't think you see the same reactions from our side that you saw from their side. I know that I wouldn't cheer, and if anybody I knew started acting that way, I'd be pretty ticked off with them, and I'd have some words. I mean,
yeah.
So it would be interesting. And then the follow-up question I'd love to have is, okay, did you girls just despise Charlie Kirk that much, or there was some, there was some Reddit platforms that were saying, hey, this could happen, and had you seen those, and were you?
And in the days following that, and it was several days, like maybe in the weeks following, you found out that there were some Reddit pages that were talking about this, and some groups that were talking about this. Now, I don't give any credibility to them because I don't think that they're all that credible. It doesn't surprise me that people would talk that way in a Reddit group, but then you compare that with the response and the reaction or lack of reaction, and you, I don't know, and that's all it is. It's all it is an observation of one person saying, well, this is what I saw, then this is what I saw. And those two things seemed inconsistent with each other. And maybe that's worth talking about. I talked to the FBI about that, gave them the footage, gave all my footage, but it never really got it. They never interviewed me about like, what do you think or anything like that, which is fine too. So.
And our producers pointed out to me, people may not know who Tyler Robinson is. So Tyler Robinson is the individual that supposedly took the shot with the 30-06 that killed Charlie Kirk. I'm going to guess most of the people know, but he is right that not everybody knows, and I've got to remember that because I've had people in the audience come up to me, hey, I just started listening to your show, and I'm trying to figure this
what the heck's going on?
What's going on? I was like, what? How do you not know? But hey, and if that's you, listen, welcome to the club. We were all like, holy crap, the world is not what we thought it was. Everybody has that experience. Well, almost everybody has that experience. There's a few people, especially now, that are starting to be raised and being told from basically birth, hey, what we're being told by our government is, and I try to share that with my kids. So let me hit some other topics that I want to hit. Now, the next thing we want to cover is Tracy Halverson's class action lawsuit. But I also want to mention, and if we talk about these quickly, that's fine. Deidre Henderson saying, having registered voters being required to prove proof of citizenship could be problematic. I'm going to say, Deidre, why is that the case? Have we made it more difficult here in the state of Utah by giving illegal aliens driver's licenses? Could that be part of the problem why it would be problematic? And the Cox crew has not done anything about that. Utah having a cloud seeding program of over 16 million. Phil, your tweet on October 21st saying people should not pay taxes on their homes or the groceries. Salt Lake County mayor proposing a 19.6% property tax increase. Utah taxpayers having to subsidize sports entertainment zone for the Jazz and Utah's new NHL team, and possibly even a Major League Baseball team they want to bring in. And then Spencer Cox saying election conspiracy theorists are playing a very dangerous game. Why would you say that, Spencer Cox? Because if it's just true conspiracy theory that isn't fact, let them say whatever you want, because it'll be proven that they're wrong, and then they look like yo-yos. Could you try again? Siri is listening in to our conversation. I don't know if you heard that.
She's always listening. Always listening.
There's been more. There's been several times recently I've been in conversations on the phone or something like that. I was talking about, hey, let's do a battle. Let's start a war. And it's a group of friends that we were and I'm like, for the NSA listening in, that happens to do with this platform that we're looking and doing in like a game. Hello. So, okay, let's get to Tracy Halverson's lawsuit. What is happening with that?
So Tracy filed a class action lawsuit under RICO, racketeering against Spencer Cox and Deidre Henderson and a few others involved in the election. And then she backs that up with the money that was brought into Utah, a lot of it during the COVID thing, the ESSER funds, the elementary school and secondary education relief money, and the no bid contracts that went out, which has been a huge platform of my campaign the last couple of years, is trying to, uncover that and expose that. So she does a class action lawsuit, and I think she's up to over 2,200 people who have signed on as part of that. We're hoping to get several 100,000 people that will sign on. It doesn't have to just be Utah, because this also affects national races. And we had a big firm, or I should say, she had a big firm in Texas today that just a law firm that signed an amicus brief. So in Utah, the response to anything Tracy does is, well, she's a kook. She's nuts. She's not an attorney. She doesn't know what she's, ha ha ha. Let's ridicule Tracy. Well, fortunately, Tracy, kind of like you and I, ridicule doesn't seem to dissuade her. In fact, it probably more validates what she's doing. So she's got a really good lawsuit that I think is really, really important. Wayne Wickheiser filed a suit about a month before Tracy's that I also think has a lot of really valid information. But I think Tracy's, being a class action suit, opportunity for people to sign on and be part of it is important. And it gets into some of the other things that you mentioned when we talk about, like, especially like the sports stadiums, being funded by taxpayers. You've got a group of people who are very invested in this governor, and they need him to stay in office. They've received, number one, they've received huge amounts of money already, and they want to receive huge amounts more, but they also don't want to be prosecuted for racketeering. They don't want to have to have any of that scrutinized on those no bid contracts. So you've got lots of motivation behind Tracy's, the target of her lawsuit, to make sure that they squash that and that it goes away, which then gets us into the need for some of the federal agencies to take note, for the Department of Justice to pay attention to what we're doing here. Anyway, so there's lots of things. It gets into the immigration. You talk about the driver's licenses. Utah, we're finding out, is a regional hub for CDLs for non-citizens, because we do our tests in Spanish. We passed a bill that said, we're going to, all of these tests, we're going to do them in the person's native language. California doesn't do that. They don't do their CDL licensing in Spanish, but Utah does. So if you're a non-citizen in California, you might come to Utah to get your CDL. All those driver's licenses that get issued automatically create a voter record in ERIC, the Electronic Records Information Center. And then that Electronic Records Information Center says,
we're not supposed to look at their question, or you could get a lawsuit over.
What's that?
That we're not supposed to question, look at, or think it's nefarious. So
then we get into the lawsuit that I have, that I started, months back against the Lieutenant Governor's office on the voter lists themselves. It's impossible from an auditing standpoint to audit the results of an election if you can't look at the denominator in that equation, which in Utah is the list of voters. It's like, well, we'll let you look at 60% of them. It's like, well, that does not give me the data to audit the entire statistical review of an election. So the DOJ now has asked for that. My lawsuit has asked for it. The Public Interest Legal Foundation has come in on that lawsuit, and we're going to get the list. The courts are going to order that we get that list, and then we're going to find out, the extent of the non-citizen voters, of the deceased voters, of whatever people that should not be on that list that are on the list, which is important. I think it's vitally important. Anyway.
So what do you hope the outcome will be? Or what does she hope the outcome will be? Actually, I'm going to say, what do you hope the outcome will be, because you are supporting it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not listed as a plaintiff yet, but I will be before this is done. I suspect I want to be. I just don't want to weaken the lawsuit or put it into a false light, because it's not a politically motivated. It's not politically motivated. Nobody's trying to gain office through this lawsuit. What we're trying to do is demonstrate the level of collusion and corruption that's going on in the state right now. And some of your readers may be familiar with the signature battle that we've had, and I don't know how much money. I'm gonna have to go back and total up how much money we've spent on grammar requests and denials and taking those to court and all of those things that we've spent. A lot of it coming out of my own pocket. So I see the amount of money that we're spending on that signature thing. But until Michael Clara started making his videos and posting about this, people were dismissing everything about this. Now I think people are saying, "Hey, wait a second! This was done knowingly and deliberately to defraud Utah, not to defraud Phil Wyman. That's a secondary issue. It's defrauding the state of Utah, and the people that have helped to push it are the ones who are receiving the largesse from having, overcome the election system to make sure that their person stays in place, and that the gravy keeps flowing." So I know that all those things really, it just starts to like give you a picture of what it is we're dealing with here in Utah. And that's really valuable. So that's, I guess, sorry, that's a long answer to what do I hope? I hope that people see exactly what it is that we're dealing with here in Utah.
I think as a citizen of the Utah, I want it to not be a problem. I don't want it to be true what you guys are trying to put forth. But the bottom line is, as a citizen of Utah who pays attention, things are feeling really dirty, looking really dirty. And bottom line is, we want as much relief as we possibly can get. Obviously, you're not going to be put in as governor, but let's make sure that the 2026, if we can, but for sure the 2028 elections can be clean as possible. That we can make sure that only citizens of Utah are voting, not just citizens of the United States. I want to make sure it's just citizens of Utah are voting, right? Now, real quickly, folks, for those of you that are watching, our call-in number is 385-899-2134. Feel free to call and ask us a question. Now, any last comments? If not, let's move on to what Deidre Henderson had to say.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess framing this, people have said, like there's nothing we can do. But we have a new president, and this new president has said he doesn't like, universal vote by mail, thinks that people should show their voter ID. And so all those people that have been saying, this is what we need if we want to have a fair election, have a little bit more validation than they were having under the Biden administration. Surprise, surprise. And so that momentum builds, and people say, yeah, why would we not have people show their voter ID when they go to vote? It's a simple, I don't know what your recollection was, growing up, but you went to the polls and you voted in your precinct, and you knew the people that were there and they knew you. And, the volunteer ladies that were there would check off your thing. You'd sign your name, you'd show your driver's license, they'd give you a ballot, you'd vote, you'd put it back, they'd count it right there at the precinct level and tally everything up till, 8 or 9 o'clock that night, and send it over to the county, and they would tally up all the precincts and send it up to the state, and the state, by 10 o'clock would have the results of the election for the day. it's so it is so
Maybe 11
simple.
o'clock. Maybe
Yeah.
11 or 11:30. I don't ever remember it going past midnight.
Yeah, yeah. It was just it's so there might have been some races that were like too close to call, and they would say, yeah, this is too close to call, or we're going to have to recount, or things like that. But having a fair election, the process is so simple. It takes, tons and tons of explanation to help people misunderstand how to do it correctly. So I love when Donald Trump comes out and says, if we want fair elections, we've got to do it this way. And so when Deidre Henderson says, that's discrimination to ask for voter ID, the right response is exactly what you said earlier: is how, why is that discrimination? Why would we not do that? That seems foundational to a fair election. And the people we're dealing with, they know it's foundational to a fair election. The fact that they don't want that tells you they don't want a fair election. They're invested in it. They're invested in it.
When someone goes to buy a house, you have to bring in your ID to prove who you are, right? So when those documents are registered with the county, that they can, be registered. So the bottom line is I look at this like, this is something we're supposed to do in so many different stages, of life. I had to renew my driver's license. I had to take some ID. Not only had to take ID in, I had to take another form of bill to prove that I was, some other proof that I lived where I said I lived. Why in the world is that a problem? If I haven't bought liquor, but I have been with someone that has bought liquor recently that is my age, and guess what? They had to show their ID to buy liquor. So the bottom line is we have to do it. And so Deidre Henderson, this is one of the things that Deidre put out along these lines. And I don't know the exact date that she posted this, but a bill making its way through Congress would require anyone registered to vote to provide proof of U.S. citizenship, something Utah Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson says is problematic and impractical. Okay, so why is it problematic why is that problematic, and what is impractical about it? Is it impractical? I'll tell you, I'm gonna give you one of the answers why I think it's impractical. Because we have so many people that have IDs from Utah that are not citizens. We've given out so many driver's licenses that we don't know. I mean, which one of those people may or may not be citizens. And Deidre Henderson, that bothers the heck out of me, because this is the stuff that I've been laughing at California about. We're letting in San Francisco, they're allowing non-citizens to vote in elections for mayor. Well, if they're voting in that, they're probably voting for the president, and they're voting for state representatives. And as far as I'm concerned, that should be as illegal as hell.
Yeah.
Mom, I'm sorry if you were watching. Please forgive me for saying that. He said that word. Phil used that bad word last time, so I'm using it. You're a bad influence.
Yeah, I'm a bad influence. I truly am a bad influence.
but it's illegal as can be, and I'm sorry. Why is and impractical, because what the state of Utah has been doing, and Deidre Henderson, I'm going, what happened to you? You are not the same person that was my state senator, that was like one of the best. You are no longer that same. You no longer like that same person. And so if I do this 10 years ago when you were my state representative, I guarantee you, I would have said, is it okay for illegals to vote? Do you have any problem with illegals voting in our elections? Senator Deidre Henderson, especially when she was first elected or going to be elected, I guarantee you her answer to me would have been, yes, that is absolutely wrong. I guarantee you would have said that. So why are you saying it's impractical? It's problematic and impractical now, Phil?
again, to understand the mechanism that's at play here, illegals don't need to be registered to vote so that they can go and vote. They need to be registered to vote so that they have a voter record, which gives you a credit line on which to draw when you're using the Smartmatic voting systems to pad and pack fake votes into the system. It's like, okay, because we found that in 2020, after the 2020 election, we came back and said, okay, if you remove out the known registered voters that clearly voted, then that leaves us with the withheld and private voters. And when we do the analysis by precinct, some of those precincts had a turnout of over 300%. That's not possible. So they're saying, well, maybe if we pack our precincts with a bunch of fake voters, then that wouldn't show up as, that wouldn't be a red flag the way it's being a red flag now. And then they've gotten really much better at like saying more scientific about, let's get all the precinct data. We want all this information in advance. We want it all in place so that we can go down and then once you have all that in there, John, you have the algorithms, you have the programming, and that's where Smartmatic, a software designed in Venezuela by the cartels. I love that Trump is calling it out. It's like, this was designed by the cartels to steal elections, and that's the systems that we're using in the United States and in Utah to tally up our voter results. And that's a really interesting thing. And Deidre, before the primary, when the results were coming out, she said, I want all clerks to send all of their data to the state prior to announcing any results. It's like, well, I'm sorry, that's not her call. But of course, the clerks are going to comply because they don't want to be out of step with the governor. The other thing I'll say on this, and maybe it gets to this, saying that they're playing a dangerous game or the criticism. I came out the night of the primary election and said there are 40,000. By my calculation, there are 40,000 fake votes preloaded into this election. And then I said, and the beautiful thing about me making such a wildly audacious statement is I can be proven wrong so easily just by an examination of the cast vote records. Used to be available at every county level, would just publish all their cast vote records. People would go, they'd analyze them and they'd say, hey, this seems off or this seems off. And by the end of it, people would say, well, overall, we can't find anything wrong. Well, now we can't look at cast vote records. And that's because they cannot withstand scrutiny. They cannot stand up to the scrutiny that they know that they would get because
now, was that fake. A bill that was passed by the state legislature, or was that a policy change?
It was an attorney general change, or a lieutenant governor change. Just like all of the policies that are interpreted, you get code from the legislature, but then the lieutenant governor interprets that, which is evidenced by the fact that anyone could go in and ask to see the voter or the nomination packets of any statewide race, right up until we ask for Spencer Cox's. And it's like, oh, well, that is against state code. That the legislature did this. In fact, Phil voted for the bill that did exactly that. It's like, no, I voted for the bill that said we can't have, that we can withhold the actual wet signature image so that people's identity is not being stolen. We can do that, but you have to replace it with their name, their address, their voter ID. And so Deidre Henderson interprets this, whatever works for her. It's always a heads we win, tails you lose interpretation with Deidre and with this elections office. And that's what we've experienced. Somebody pointed out online the other day, it's like, if you've made this error and this error and this error and this error, you've got a list of 18 errors, and all of them are in favor of the lieutenant governor and against Phil Lyman. You have to start to wonder, are these actually errors, or are they trying to sabotage the campaign of Phil Lyman?
Is that a feature or a bug?
A defect or a feature?
Or is it a bug?
Yeah, it's absolutely. And so here again, it's one of those things. It's like, thank goodness people are waking up. They're seeing what's going on. And that's what we have going on with the elections and then our, we went to a grandma hearing just 2 weeks ago. And of course, they've done away with the grandma board. Now they just have a hearing officer. So one person gets to decide, of course, appointed by the governor, appointed by the lieutenant governor, overseen by their office. And he had this, Lonnie Pearson had to say, well, I've got a conflict of interest, after we pointed out that clearly he has a conflict of interest. And so then you go to that hearings, to that grandma hearing, and you go through that dog and pony show, and without fail, it's always going to go against us. If they were smart, they would just like give us the information. They would have just given us the signature packets. We would have gone in and done the best that we could and review them. It would have been a Herculean task, but denying them actually, I guess, served our narrative better than if they'd have just provided those things.
Let's hit another topic. Okay, so let me ask you, why do you think Deidre Henderson feels that there is a conflict in interest, in conflict of interest in a full audit of the citizens of Utah voters? Why do you think there's a conflict? Why do you think she thinks that?
It's a false flag, red herring. There's no conflict of interest in having the lists audited. And this, I'm sensitive to privacy issues. In fact, I tried to run a privacy bill in the legislature, and it got shot down by all these people that now want all this privacy. I mean, I value privacy. That's why you hire, qualified, independent, third-party professionals to come in and do the job that you're asking them to do. CPA firms. I'm a CPA. That's their stock in trade, is their independence and their integrity and their objectivity. And that's why you'd have a CPA firm come in and do this thing. One of the clerks early on said, what, do you want my voter list? And I said, I wouldn't know what to do with it if you gave it to me. I want a CPA firm to look at it. I want a CPA firm to review this and give me the level of assurance. The same, when I go and buy a stock, I don't go and visit the company and learn about the CEO, but I do look at the CPA report on that company. And if there's a problem, they say it. It says right in that we got a concern about whether this company will be around in 5 years. They've got these competitive factors at play. They've got this, they had some illegal activity that took place, and they reveal that if it's part of it. So it's so valuable to have the independent, qualified, third-party, independent professional come in and take a look at that, which I've tried for 3 years to run a bill, each consecutively getting smaller and smaller in scope, to where it came down to the final bill was whatever Deidre is willing to let this firm look at, that's all that they can look at. And it would just help provide a level of reassurance to the public. And of course, they fought that one tooth and nail too. And it's like, okay, I think I see what we have going on here. And it's a fraudulent office doing fraudulent activities, colluding with the Attorney General's office, colluding with the Department of Justice to steal an election. And again, please prove me wrong. I would love it. I would love to be proven wrong. And the more resistance that they throw up to that examination is more evidence. And we're fine. And now we're down to actually getting what we absolutely have to have. And it shows exactly our hypothesis to be factual, which is that they're cheating.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. I hope that it makes it all. I hope you get everything you need, so we can find out if you're wrong, Phil, or if they are. I don't think you're wrong, but I'm willing to call balls and strikes.
There's a first time for everything, meaning I could be wrong.
That's good, Phil. That's really good. All right. Let's hit. Utah is having a cloud seeding program that is over $16 million. Okay. I thought you posted some. So this was on your X profile. And so one of the things you asked was, well, it could increase the water by 10% in Utah. Who gets that 10% increase? I believe it was 10%. I don't think it's 20. I believe it was 10%. But let's just say that it's a 10% increase. Who gets that water? Does it go to the
Yeah.
people who are water rights? And I'm like, I wonder if the reason why they're having this cloud seeding program is because they're trying to drain the Great Salt Lake so much with the point of the mountain, with the data center at the point of the mountain, and then also the is it a uranium plant out at the Great Salt Lake where they're getting all of the rare earth minerals from. They're able to get that, and they need to be draining water out of the Great Salt Lake to do it. It's one of the best places in the United States to pull out certain, I forget which minerals it is. I want to say it's uranium, but I could be wrong. No, it's not uranium that they'd be pulling out. What is that? I can't remember what it is, but that was one of the things that came into my mind.
They do a lot of lithium mining out there.
That's it. The lithium mining. Okay. Yeah. Please forgive me, folks. I got uranium and lithium mixed up. Shame on me. But Phil Lyman there to save me. So, I'm like, and it's interesting. This guy seems to be somewhat solid. I mean, the guy who is running this company, he went on Alex Jones to talk about it. I was like, you're going on the Alex Jones show to talk about this? You got guts, sir. And you may not be all bad. But on the other end, MTG is totally against this, the idea of doing this. So I'm like, and so I can see both sides on this. We're putting chemicals up in the air to get rainwater to come down. On the flip side of the point, we live in a desert. Now, I remember clear back from when I was a kid that there was a cloud seeding program that would happen during the winter when there was fog, when there was bad fog for the Salt Lake International. They would do cloud seeding to reduce some of the fog. So I'm like, okay, is this bad? Is this good? And I don't know what to think on it. Phil, now, probably because it's being done by the government, it's probably a bad thing. But Phil, what are your thoughts? And I'm assuming you've seen a little bit more of this when you were in the state legislature than I have, because this program, they've been doing this type of program for quite some time here in the state of Utah.
I mean, cloud seeding has kind of been controversial because you're pulling water from the air, and if Utah's doing a lot of cloud seeding, there was a time that Colorado was saying, hey, that's rainfall that would have come to Colorado, but you're pulling it out prematurely in Utah, so we don't like that. You saw the flooding in Texas, and I'm convinced that those horrendous floods were largely due to cloud seeding. So it's like, it can be a reckless tool, kind of controlling the weather. But what this comes down to, honestly, on the cloud seeding in Utah, is who's paying for it, and where are they doing the seeding, and where is that rain going to fall? And if you had honest elected officials, they would say this needs to be done fairly, and the contracts need to be honest, fair contracts. With this administration, I just have to assume that is going to be going to people who were kind to Spencer Cox. The rain is going to fall on you and not on these people. I'm going to spend the money on these contractors who were friendly towards me and my campaign. And you're part of the club now. It's you're on the inside, so you get the contract for the cloud seeding. It's going to fall. The rain is going to going to seed the clouds above these areas where people have supported Spencer Cox. And honestly, that is the pattern that I've seen across the board. Similarly, when Senator Lee came out with his, to dispose of certain federal lands, nobody should be more enthusiastic about that proposal than Phil Lyman. The problem was, I could just see this is going to be another crony deal done by an unelected governor who's going to have his hands on this. And that part, it makes a difference. Things done honestly are very, very different than the same things that are done with a dishonest motivation. So I see some real dishonest motivation on the cloud seeding. And again, if we're going to do it, let's have a legitimate process where people talk about it. And I think you're exactly right as far as the Great Salt Lake has always been used as a lever to unlock resources from the state to whatever funnel to those that are on the right side of Spencer Cox. And I'm really sick of that. And I've watched that happen. It's dirty business anytime you bring up the Great Salt Lake. Now I'll take it one step further. If we truly wanted to manage the water in Utah, we would manage our forests better. I've been up in the mountains above, up in Big Cottonwood Canyon, the overgrowth that's up there, the fire hazard that it creates, all of these things that are, again, the effect of really bad policy that's really hurting people and is going to create major problems, could be resolved through policy of saying, let's go out,
If we
let's
have
clear
a
out
lot
some
of
of the forest.
overgrowth in the Cottonwood Canyons, what happens to a lot of overgrowth eventually?
Yeah, I mean, it is a
Big fires.
It's a
Big
problem
fires.
waiting to happen. And here you have up in Big Cottonwood Canyon, you had a historic coming together of the private landowners. They drove the discussions with the Forest Service and with the BLM to actually go in and provide some access, provide some forest maintenance. And it's a beautiful thing. And the result of that is a healthier watershed that's going to help the Great Salt Lake. All of the efforts that they do in like slowing the flow and conserving, all that water evaporates in a matter of, all that savings that we do in Utah, evaporates in 2.5 days out of the Great Salt Lake. What we need is more healthy forests, safer people, safer fire infrastructure. All of it makes sense, and all of it is good policy that would feed the Great Salt Lake. Instead of doing that, we're letting those forests overgrow. We're seeding, doing cloud seeding, throwing money at people that I believe. I don't know the contractor on this, and I don't fault any contractor that goes out and makes an honest living, on government contracts. But if they also have a lobbyist up on the hill, then that should be disclosed, and we should find out, okay, is this on the up and up, or is this another Spencer Cox special?
And another thing that needs to be done is we need to have scientific results made public, known to the public. What the findings are when the cloud seeding is done. This is the results. The areas that didn't receive cloud seeding, that were 100 miles away in Utah, this was the amount of rainfall there. This is and point A and point B. When point A gets, when St. George gets so much water, San Juan has a tendency to get so much water from the same the same weather pattern, right?
Mhm.
That information should be kept, should be known, so we can track it, and we can go 5 years from now, we can go, oh, there actually is a benefit, or we can't see a benefit and we're wasting $16 million, or oh my gosh, there's real problems with this.
Yeah. What I saw in the legislature, and I started blowing the whistle on this 4 years ago, and it was all dealing with water, and it's all to centralize control of the water. And the legislature is the instrument to do that. We pass these bills, and it says, well, all the water is owned by the state anyway, so we're just going to control measure every drop. We're going to monitor this to a T. When what is happening is the legislature is being used as a front for the developers who know that development is contingent on water. And if a developer can control the water resource, he controls the development. And that's why they want it all up on the Wasatch Front. They want everything concentrated on the Wasatch Front. And it is a developer's game. If you understand that, then you understand
And,
kind of
and
why
folks,
we're doing
what he is saying is true. I mean, I've been around several development projects recently, and there's two things they want: property and the water rights that come with that property. How are more water rights? How do we get the water? That is big questions. And he who controls the water, I think, in the state of Utah more than anything else. And it's interesting. I've talked to people from Oregon. They just don't understand the whole idea of why is people praying for water. Talk to some people in Arkansas. They're like, we never pray for water. It's not a problem in the most of the United States. It's not even as big of a problem, I think, in Colorado as it is here in Utah. Nevada and Utah, we got the issue. So yeah, it's something that we need to make sure that we have honest people dealing with it. And frankly, cities, I have a friend of mine who was an attorney, and he was like, up until about 10 years ago, when our family's water rights were stolen from us, he goes, I never questioned that the government would do something wrong. He goes, our family's water rights were literally stolen from us. And he goes, that was the first time where I went, oh my gosh, what people say is real. Let's see. Let's talk about Utah taxpayers having to subsidize sports entertainment zone for the Utah Jazz. Actually, let's first hit that your tweet you shared on the 21st. You said people should not pay taxes on their homes or groceries. Salt Lake County and the Salt Lake County mayor is proposing a 19.6 property tax increase. Okay, so I think some people, when they hear you should not have to pay property taxes, that's a record-scratching moment for people. I'm like,
Yeah. So if you're in Utah and we value families, then let's stop taxing them out of their homes and taxing their groceries. A lot of states that are doing that, getting rid of property tax altogether is a heavy lift. I've looked into that. A few states that are talking about doing it. But if we kind of compare it to getting rid of income taxes, the states that do that find other sources of revenue to pay the bills. And most of them go to their minerals, whether it's Alaska or Nevada, subsidized by gambling as well.
Wyoming.
Wyoming, they're looking at their minerals. And what it does is if I'm a legislator and I recognize that if we're not producing, if our mineral and our energy production is weak, then our revenue is down, then I'm going to be pro energy production. I'm going to be pro mineral exploration. And instead in Utah, we've gone the absolute opposite direction. San Juan County, where I'm at, used to be the second highest centrally assessed value. So basically the minerals and the mines and stuff. We're second only to Salt Lake County, which because of Kennecott Copper is always led by, and not by a little ways. They've always been number one by a long ways. Well, San Juan County was number two. Now San Juan County is, towards the last. And it's not because we don't have any minerals down here. It's because everything has been shut down by federal ownership of the land. And through the Bureau of Land Management and all of these entities. And what we're finding out is that the money that's being spent on the environmentalists to influence the Bureau of Land Management to make these decisions is coming from China and Russia to shut down our energy production, to shut down our coal production at the same time that China is building a coal-fired power plant every week and Russia's building nuclear. China's moving into thorium. It's like, this is all designed to weaken the United States. And the communists in the United States who are pushing this agenda are not, again, it's not a defect, it's a feature. It's not a bug. This is a feature. And if you read the Naked Communist, Ben Carson mentioned that a couple of times recently. And so I started reading that. The bedrock of the Communist Manifesto is no ownership of private property. And so when Salt Lake comes out, when Salt Lake County comes out and says, well, we're going to raise your property taxes 20%, and people are saying, well, I'm not going to be able to stay in my home. I'm going to have to sell my house and move into, high density housing. Do you think that the mayor of Salt Lake County is saying, oh, that's horrible, we didn't expect that? They're saying, yes, you're getting it. You will own nothing and you will be happy. This is what we've all agreed to. And all of you, the plebs, all of you, little people out there,
you little people, yes, little
peons.
peons.
It's finally starting to click. Oh, I don't need a big house. I don't need a family. I don't need religion. I don't need the government is my source, and it's communism. we're not fighting to keep communism out of our country. It's here. It's in Utah. What we're fighting now is the effects of communism, and that's why conservatives are not going to win the day. It's going to be activists who see what's happening and will step up and fight because they're fighting in reality instead of a fake scenario.
Here, so I like that what you said. It's about families. I'm gonna say this. I wish I knew where it was. I wish they would have heard where they referenced. But I was listening to the Jason Whitlock show, Fearless with Jason Whitlock, and he had a pastor on, and he said it is biblically immoral and against biblical principles for property taxes. And I'm like, name verse, I gotta find it. And unfortunately never named it, but I'm like, that is totally gone with my my thought process. So I had back when I was in my early 20s, I worked at a business where there was a lady that had been there her name was Ethel, and she'd been there longer than the business was. She was really old when I got there. And so she wound up having to sell her home and move because the property taxes on her home that her and her husband worked their tails off to pay off, the property taxes were more on her home than what the mortgage was that they had worked really hard to pay off. And I'm like, that was the first time that I went, that makes a lot of sense. We shouldn't be taxing people's homes. Someone should be able to pay their home. Now, I could see, okay, so let me run this by you. Someone is building, going to build a new home. A city's allowing a home to be built. I think that they should assess a property tax on it, say $20,000, $30,000. That way you can roll it into a mortgage, but that is the one time only you get that. So then the city then has to, make investments, and think, but it's a one time. Soon when the property is developed, it's a one time thing.
Yeah.
To me, I could see that being ethical and moral. But what are your thoughts to that? And I'm willing to say I might even be wrong on that, because what about the farmer, right?
Taxation is theft, and that's a good place to start. But then we say, well, we do have services that we want, that we value, and that we're willing to pay for as a society, defense and, protecting property and things like that, which is why the communists say, well, this is a capitalist trying to protect their property. That's why we have all these things. And so they love the graduated income tax and all this stuff that are really part of the Communist Manifesto. But when we get down to the tax on people's homes, we're talking about, do they actually have ownership? Do you ever really own that house? When your scenario, and I've always said on the national level, I like the idea. If you have to have a tax, I like the idea of a national sales tax versus a national income tax. People say, well, it's not fair. It's like, yeah, but it's easier to monitor. You could get rid of the IRS for the most part. You can get rid of all that tax code that tries to determine that kind of stuff. So I like your idea. I guess, long story short, I like the idea of saying, well, if we're going to have a tax, if we're going to have a property tax, let's do it on the sale of the home, wrap it into the mortgage. People will pay that over the life of their mortgage, and when their mortgage is paid off, they will have paid that property tax, which looks kind of like a sales tax.
Yeah. So why is it? So I'm going to go to you. Why is it immoral? Why is it wrong? And to tax groceries?
Again, if you value families, then you value families, and we say, we're not going to tax a family who's struggling to pay for their groceries. And of course, the counter argument is, oh, what about the millionaire who has no problem at all paying for groceries, and he buys a lot more groceries than his poor neighbors? And I heard that argument a lot. So not taxing groceries is different than not taxing restaurant food and convenience store food and things like this. And I just think it's honestly it's the least you can do. And if you crunch the numbers on what Utah is going to lose in revenue, it's a tiny little part of the overall budget, but it's a nod to genuinely to families who probably need it the most, because everybody has to have a certain subsistence level of groceries, and to tax somebody on something that is subsistence, I think is wrong. So I say, don't tax people on their home and on their groceries. That's subsistence. That's what it takes for us to exist and to live. And the government should not tax that. You should be able to feel like you're free.
And the bottom line is, we need to start having more children. And I think that's something that we're starting to notice. We've got to have more children. Now, you've done pretty well on that. I've done okay on it. I've got 5.
Yeah, I got 5. Got a bunch of grandkids.
So I don't have any grandkids yet. That's hopefully I get that in the next 5 years. I'm about to sit down and have a conversation with my son and daughter-in-law and say, can I give you a little information? No.
I had that conversation with my oldest son when he got off his mission. I said, Kate, I've got a goal. And he said, yeah, what's that? And I said, I want 9 grandkids in 9 years. And he said, you can't put that kind of pressure on me. And I said, well, you got siblings. I'm doing the math. And it's funny because it was Gary Herbert at a conference, and he just said he's got 9 grandkids. And I was doing the math. It's like, well, he's about this much older than me. And it's like, okay, 9 grandkids in 9 years. Well, we had our 9th grandkid almost exactly 9 years later. And it was a team effort, and honestly, I don't want to jinx this, because I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful, and God's in charge, and he's in charge of the timing. But yeah, his reaction was the same. It was like, Dad, you can't, like, stay in your lane, Dad. This is.
Well, I'm like, I've got
right,
5 children, and if each one of them average 5 children, that's 5. And if they can spread it over 25 years, for 25 years, I'll have a new grand, because I do enjoy holding babies. I love holding babies, because I feel like I'm touching heaven.
And that's Charlie Kirk. That's out of all of his, counsel, that was the thing that really I thought was the most honest, was get married, have more kids than you can afford, and teach them to ride their bikes till sundown. And it's like, okay, that's living, that's life. That's what it's all about. I'm with you on that. I love the idea of kids going out, getting married, and having babies. I also told my kids when they were, kind of heading off to college, or when they're getting married and didn't know how it's going to work, I'd say, 6 billion people on this planet figured it out. You're going to be fine. You'll figure it out. Now it's like 7.5 billion or whatever. But and I really believe that. It's like, live life already. Don't postpone. Don't wait till you've got a house and a job and car and all this stuff. And just go live the life. And honestly, like you pointed out, holding a little baby and just, being in a family and having siblings, and honestly having the struggles that come with that, whether it's financial, that.
I'm glad you brought that up. So one of the most important things to having families bigger than two children, one thing I have noticed, the bigger a family someone comes from, the less they are communist minded.
Yeah.
And the better a human being they tend to be. And there, what's the reason? One of the reasons for that is you have to learn, you have to forgive, and we all make mistakes. And at one point in time, this sibling might be my favorite person, and then another sibling might become my favorite person. There are so many lessons that are learned. You learn how to share. You learn how to get along. You learn how to give grace. And the bigger the family someone comes from, the better people they have a tendency to be. Now, are there outliers? Of course there are. But in general, I'll take the statistical average out of a large family than a small family. Now, I have heard a couple women recently on their TikTok saying that they're going to loot stores as of November 1st. One lady said, "Yeah, I've got seven babies by seven babies by seven different men." I'm like, you're a statistical outlier on that one, I guarantee. But all right. It's pretty much 6:00. I do want to hit you talk taxpayers having to subsidize sports entertainment zones for the Jazz and Utah's new NHL team, and possibly even a Major League Baseball team they're coming up with. So the billionaires get a benefit from the taxpayers. Okay, let's build infrastructure around the arenas. I can see that. Got to build a road. We'll take in the sewers. That's on the but after that, you should be on your own.
Well, it's kind of like the Olympics, saying, well, if we don't get the Olympics, somebody else will get it. Then they'll get all that economic boost and everything that comes with it. And I say, oh, well, okay, then good. Then they'll get all that and we'll be happy for them. And that's the same argument with if we don't do this for these sports teams, then those sports teams are going to go to another state that's willing to do that for them. And you have to stop and say, okay, well, am I going to be held hostage by that logic? Am I going to cave into that logic? And the answer has got to be no. I'm not going to be held hostage. There are still, it still is an economic calculation, and I understand the economic calculation of saying, well, if we do this, then we will have this amenity, which will bring so much more economic prosperity to downtown Salt Lake. It'll help. It'll do all these things. Great. Then let's have an honest discussion about that instead of a discussion led by the lobbyists and the people who are going to benefit the most. Let's actually have an honestly elected group of people who say this feels like the right thing to do, and even put it on the ballot. Let's do it as a referendum. Let's let the people actually vote in an honest election. So
how about I throw this one out? Mr. Ryan Smith and owners of sports teams. How about this? Let us fund you. And we'll figure out what the percentage cost is for funding you. But when you go to sell that team, we get a percentage of the increase of the sports team when it's either moved or sold. And I guarantee you none of them want to do that.
Right. You hit the nail on the head there, because it is let the public share the risk, but let the individual have the benefit of that. And again, when you start
no. So if you don't do it, so the way that they want to do it, the public has all the risk and none of the benefit.
Right. Exactly.
So the owner gets all of the benefit and none of the risk.
And if I'm a developer, it's like, how can I beat that? How can I beat that deal? That's worth like, putting your pencil to paper and making that happen. But it's not right it's not right. So we get back to the idea of making honest policy, properly elected officials, living within our means, and just not falling for the garbage. I tried to run a bill a few years ago which said that firms that manage the campaigns of legislators could not also lobby that legislator after the fact. And I had a number of firms come and say, "Why do you hate me? Why do you hate my whole business model?" It's like, well, I don't. I'm not. But if you get this person elected and then you lobby that person, what you've done is you've turned the whole government over to the lobbyists. and the lobbyists are the developers and the money interests, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not fair. I guess I'll put it that way. It works very well for those people, and they've seen, it's like, man, the return on investment for buying a representative, buying a senator in Utah is super, super high. So you'd be foolish not to do that, but it's also foolish for a legislature to permit that to happen. And yet we welcome it. Again, it's not a bug. It's a feature of being in the legislature. It's like, I can do very well for myself in the legislature, especially if I have some development interests and I'm willing to like work my angles. So,
Okay. So just a quick question for you, because we are at 6:06 Utah time.
time flies.
There is the president of the Senate, right? I'm using the correct term.
Yeah.
Had a bill passed last legislative session or was trying to pass a bill where he would decrease the age for what would be considered sexual assault for an 18-year-old. Apparently, said senator had a granddaughter who was facing that. And this is one of those things where I go, how often do you hear of a young woman being intimate relations with someone 4 years younger than her? I feel very bad for that young woman because something's gone on in her life. I don't know what that is. I'm like, something's gone on in her life for that to happen. So we'll set that aside. What are your thoughts?
There's no question that legislation affected the decision for the senator's granddaughter. And because the judge said, he referenced it in his decision, that even though this bill is not retroactive, it tells us the mind of the legislature. And so we're going to, not have we're not going to sentence this girl to what we would have otherwise. So it did have an effect. I think the president of the Senate should acknowledge that and acknowledge that, that maybe they received a benefit that other people may not have received. Yeah, honestly, beyond that, I don't know what. I'm not going to try to assign a nefarious motive to the senator, but there should be like full disclosure. Yes, I was in a position where a family member of mine was going to benefit by this, and likely did. And I think an acknowledgement of that would be important. But instead, it's a denial and and like criticizing people that bring that up. And
I wonder this. I really wonder this. Would that state senator have ran that same bill had his granddaughter, when they were 14 or whatever the age was that they wanted to reduce it to, had some 18-year-old young man or 19-year-old young man had intimate relations with his granddaughter? Had he run this? Would he have run the same bill?
So if I wanted to frame that, yeah, I think that's a really good question. The answer is probably not. But what the underlying problem is the leverage that leadership has in the legislature. Instead of that bill coming out and legislators saying, "Oh, I like that. I think there are 18-year-olds who clearly should not be, held to the same level as, their peers who are still in high school, whatever." But that's not the calculation. The calculation is like, this is coming from the top, and I better support it. There's going to be hell to pay. Sorry, John's mom. It's going to be it's going to be hell to pay if I go against this, because clearly it has the backing and the momentum of leadership. That needs to go away completely. You need to have legislators up there who feel like, I represent my 47,000 constituents, and if you're in the House or whatever, the 90,000 if you're in the Senate, and that's I'm going to vote the way that I think my conscience tells me and the way I think my constituents want, instead of looking, turning your back on all the constituents and saying, I can see what's expected of me, and I'm going to follow the prescribed course because I'd like to be chairman of the, education committee next year. And that's exactly what happens at the legislature. Not a mystery, not even nefarious, just factual. And that's the way it works. And I put that on Spencer Cox and some of the big think tanks, the Kim Gardner Institute, the universities that exercise undue influence down through those operatives, the election hive folks, that run people's campaigns and also lobby. The biggest lobbying firm is also running the most campaigns. They're running the signature gathering outfits. They're serving on people's campaigns as it's very, very incestuous, and the legislature could fix that. I brought a bill that would have done it. And how far do you think that bill got? I mean,
I don't think it saw the lot. I don't even know that it made out of committee. I would say
no, it didn't make it to a committee. It did not make it out of rules. It did not get heard. It was like, no, Phil. And because you even brought it up, you can just like go sit in the corner for the rest of the session.
Yeah, go put the dunce hat on, Phil. All right.
Which I'm okay with. Again, that's back to your initial point of voting no on bad bills is more important than voting yes on good bills, and it's hard to do. You get it. Right. You get it better than most.
Well, I'm gonna let's bring this to a close. Any last thoughts, Phil, for our audience?
I guess if I have a last thought, it's how I don't know, humble and grateful I am to see, to see our society move in a direction that I think is going to bring us closer to honesty in our government. And I woke up this morning, I've got my daughter living with us while they're, getting settled in their house. She's got 5 kids. We're tending 5 other. So I woke up this morning to 10 grandkids, and I looked, and it does affect me. And I thought, fruit of my loins, it's like, but I'm looking at these people and I'm saying, they deserve the very best that we can give them. And I know that's how, at least I feel like that's how George Washington felt. He was not office seeking. He was trying to provide something that would be, generationally meaningful. I'm a beneficiary of it. I'm so grateful. And I'm so, honored always to be involved in the same type of fight. And I always tell people on my team, it's not our fight. It is the fight. This is the fight. And to be, engaged in it and watching it happen, might make some mistakes, but it's better to be in it than out. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm truly grateful to you joining us again, Phil. We'll have you back. I don't know, maybe every other month. Hopefully we can get you. I'd love to get you every month.
I don't want to wear out my welcome, but it's very cathartic for me to talk to you, John. So thanks.
Welcome to my couch,
yes,
as it were.
Yeah.
All right. So folks, this has been Talk with John. Phil, I'm going to talk to you offline real quick for just a moment after we're done. Okay. This has been KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. I want to say thank you so much for being here. I want to say thank you to Dwayne, who was our producer. Appreciate you being there. Folks, if you want to hear more from Phil Lyman, he's been on my show a few times. He's also been on a few of our other shows. So go to kmmu.org. And you can see what we've done on X, Rumble, and YouTube. When you go to kmmu.org, there's a little buttons up at the top that you'll be able to punch that will be able to take you to those different platforms. So this is Talk with John. You can go to my X posts and see my X posts, and that is my X handle is Talk with John 1. That's Talk with JON 1. Thank you for joining me. I should be here next week, so with Michaelette. So take it easy.